Well, good morning and welcome to today's episode of Transformed. We're going to continue today our series on Me3 living. And today I want to talk about the friend of the bridegroom.
Welcome to today's message with Pastor Jim Balzano.
We always want to thank Park Home for our studio furniture and Taylor Design and Events for our studio design. So let me tell you a story. It's kind of one I kind of enjoy telling, and it shows a little bit of my ornery side. You see, I'll start like this. He called once, and I didn't answer. And he called a second time, and I didn't answer. And because he didn't get the hint, he called a third time. And yes, I did not answer. I knew who it was, and I knew what he wanted. And I wasn't going to make it easy. Eric, my future son-in-law and my present son-in-law, was calling so that he could take me out to lunch to ask me if he could marry my daughter. Finally, on the fourth call, I answered the phone, and I did not answer because I wanted to. I answered because my wife Penny was standing there and said, "You answer that phone." This is what I heard on the other end. "Hey, Jim, I was wondering if you had time for lunch sometime next week." Can you believe that? He was calling me and acting as if he wanted to spend time with me when all he was doing was setting me up to ask me to marry Tony. I wanted to say, "No, don't call again." However, I consented, and the next week we were going to go for lunch. I knew he wanted to pop the question when he came, and so I did what any good father should do. I talked, and I talked, and I talked, and I talked some more. I talked football, baseball, basketball, and any other subject that crossed my mind. And yes, I was enjoying it for a moment. Finally, I shut up, and I let him pop the question. Of course, I couldn't help saying when he asked the question, "You mean this was all a setup? You mean you didn't invite me to have lunch with me and spend time with me, but rather just to ask me to marry my daughter?" It was an interesting moment to watch his face when I said that. See, don't misunderstand me. I love Eric, and I'm proud to have him as a son-in-law. But sometimes you just have to have a little fun. My fun was at his expense. But trust me, his question became my expense. You see, and I was privileged to perform the wedding. But my brother-in-law did the first part of the ceremony as I was busy walking the bride down the aisle. And when I got to him at the front of the church, he asked a question: "Who is giving Tony to be married to Eric?" That's a pretty profound word. Give? How do you give away a daughter you have loved for so long? How do you give a hand that you've held for so many years to someone for the rest of their lives? Personally, I think I might have wanted to respond, "Not me." But it was essential that I give her hand in marriage. If I didn't let her go, I was being selfish, and it would be to her detriment. If I didn't release her, the fruit that was and is to come and has come from her covenant relationship with Eric would never be born physically and spiritually. I had to let her go. I must let her go. I must release her to her husband. And in the process, I must become lesser as he becomes greater in her life. The essence of living a life that is God first, others second, and me third, is a life that will disregard selfish desires to fulfill the destiny of others. John the Baptist understood this when he said these 7 little words: "He must increase, but I must decrease." John chapter 3, verse 30. You see, John put God's interest above his own interest. I'm sure that John heard the story of how he was supernaturally given to his parents in their old age. I also believe he would have told them about the prophetic mandate that came with his birth. The mere fact that he wasn't named after his father gave a special nature to his birth. The God who formed him, shaped him, and gave him to his parents had first place in his life. You see, John put God's interest above his own, but then John put the interest of others before his own. If John had pursued his own interest, God would have been displeased and others would have suffered. Think of this. If John had taken a competitive spirit of me versus Jesus, his selfish agenda would have been to the demise of others. His desire to be seen would have without question caused others to not see Jesus for who he was. See, John took the position of a me-3 living because he was a friend of the bridegroom. John referred to Jesus as the bridegroom and himself as the friend of the bridegroom. His calling was to pave the way for the bridegroom to be joined to the bride. His joy was working so the bride and the bridegroom could be joined together. A selfish friend might steal the bride, but one who lives God first, others second, and himself third, always rejoices over the bride and the bridegroom coming together. Friends of the bridegroom know their purpose and they live it to the fullest. The only way he could have fullness of joy was to rejoice over the sound of the bridegroom and living to bring him together with his bride. A lot of people are looking for joy through fulfilling selfish agendas and end up without joy. John's life is a prime example of someone who lived God first, others second, and himself third, and found joy and fulfillment in doing it. Are you a friend of the bridegroom? Are you willing to deny yourself and help him accomplish his agenda over yours? You see, and if you do that, that's the life of the friend of the bridegroom. And my baby girl got married October 18, 2008, and it was a joyful occasion as opposed to one of resentment over my impending season of diminished influence in her life. At that point, I had to live God first, others second, and me third in order to be part of his plan for my life, her life, and the life of others. And so, in order to be a person that enables others to be greater while you become lesser, you got to live with the mentality of God first, others second, me third. Have a great week.